Yes. See if this is working. All right, I am live. This is my first YouTube live stream. Bear with me because I'm learning the technical stuff. Let's see if anyone's here. I think I'll just play a little bass. Hey, what's up, Alex? How's it going? This is the first live streaming of the first person, James. Hey, greetings. Bear with me, guys. I'm learning how to do the live stream thing on YouTube, and I'm learning how to do the software, and I think it's working. I hope you can hear me. So yeah, just tell me if there's a technical issue. That would help me. The main thing is I'm hoping that my voice and the sound is in sync with the video. That's my main concern. But yeah, this is cool. This is exciting. This is the first live stream. This might be something that I start to do more frequently based off of your interest. But we could kind of talk about whatever we want to. So I see we have James in the UK. We have Daniel in the Netherlands. Daniel, I love the Netherlands. I can't wait to go back over there. Not in sync. Uh-oh. How bad is it? Is it by a few seconds? Hey, everybody. Bear with me while I work out this technical stuff. Brazil. Let's see here. Sound is linking up fine. Frame rate is a bit slow here and there. Okay, well, that's okay. I have it set to like a medium latency so that hopefully I'm not too far behind what you're typing. So James said we're not in sync, but Alex is saying it's syncing up. And Daniel heard my comment about the Netherlands. So I think we're working. James, I'm sorry if you're dealing with some issues, but as I was saying, bear with me, guys. This is my first live stream and I'm learning the technical stuff. But while we're okay, so missing frames, but just a little. So it sounds like I probably just need to change a little bit of let me see if I can change the offset. Hey.
I think it's just our Wi-Fi slow, so you
Okay.
just have the frames are a little choppy.
A little choppy.
But the sync's not that bad.
Okay, copy that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're in business. We're gonna make do with what we have today. Yeah, a little choppy frame rates. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for the choppiness. I think it's my internet. Basically, my internet's not that great here, so I might have to switch to fiber here if we start doing more live streams. But hopefully, it's not too terrible for you. So yeah, that's on my end. So thanks for bearing with me. So what do you want to talk about? Throw any questions out in the chat and say where you're from too. I'm curious where all of you are coming in from. Playing the Mustang bass right now. Love this little short scale bass. So, how many people we got here? Looks like we got 6 people in here right now. Hey, Mr. Scholl. How you doing, Rhett? Okay, that's a really good question. Watchmaker FS. Ah, and also, Rhett, I did just see your comment. Happy release day as well. If you didn't know, today is the day that Noah's album, Noah Guthrie, his album Blue Wall, is out today, and it's been a while. We recorded a lot of those songs like 2 years ago. It's been in the works for a long time. So the fact that it's finally out today is a special day. So if you haven't heard it yet, go wherever you listen to music and check it out. I'm really proud to be a part of that album. So I want to answer Watchmaker's question. How do you approach learning a whole new set list for a gig? That's actually really tough. I've had to do that a number of times. Part of it has to do with how long you have to prepare. Remember, there was one time I had to prepare an hour of music for a live show the next day. And when you have a situation like that, you just chart it all out and read the charts. And that's when having the ability to read, generate, and internalize charts will really save you. If you have some time, what I do is I listen to it as much as I can. So even if I'm not actively practicing the music, I'm internalizing it. So listen to it in the car, listen to it doing chores around the house. Just get it in your ears even before you start to play it, because then it cuts your practice time in half, because half of the work is just knowing the way the song goes. I always generate charts as well. Even if I don't use them on the gig, the act of making charts is helpful for me. And also, like, let's say I'm filling in for a bass player once, and then a year from now I get asked to do the same gig. I might not remember the songs, but I have all of the work already done, right? So I would say you listen to it as much as you can, you make accurate charts, and then you just get as much time in as you can. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to burn your hands out all at once. But let's say it's a week away and you have an hour of music. The first day, I would probably just listen. The second day, I would chart it all out. And then the third day, I would start taking it song by song and really digging into each song. So hopefully by the time we got to the gig, I would have spent a lot of time with each song and be prepared. So that's a really good question. What else? What other questions you guys got? And where are you coming in from? It sounds like we have Germany. We have Kennesaw, Georgia, not too far. We have, see you later, Daniel. Thanks for saying hey. We've got Brazil. We've got Holland. We've got the UK. Some of my favorite places. Let me know how the sync is and the connection if you guys can see and hear what's going on. I have a bunch of ideas for the live stream, by the way. I have a crazy idea, which might be to do a tiny song live. So that means like write and create a whole song in real time. I think that's something that might be cool. It'd be tough because I'd have to do it on the fly, sink or swim. And there'd be some technical challenges of trying to get it where we could see and hear Logic and whatever software I'm doing in real time, but I kind of want to give it a try. Okay, Albert says it's gotten a lot better. That makes me happy. I think it is my internet, and it makes me think that I need to upgrade my internet. So thanks for bearing with me. Rhett says, what's more difficult, a 4-hour wedding gig or booming a 20-minute scene? Both are terrible. If you don't know, when I'm not playing bass, I'm a boom operator, which means I am a sound technician in the film industry. So my job is to hold the microphone over the actors while they're acting. And sometimes it can get interesting, especially if you have a long take. Thanks, Caleb. I am having a great day. I got some questions from Instagram, so I might check some of those out and throw them out in the chat here. I am reading the chat. I don't think the latency is too bad. I think it's like when you're typing, I'm seeing it like within 10 seconds or so. So, yeah, just throw out your questions. But I'm going to see if I can get one from Instagram real quick. This is fun. I can see why people like to do this. All right, let's see what we got. Favorite song off of Blue Wall? That's tough. I think my favorite one to play, which is funny, is That's All. Is so fun to play for me. It's not the most rockin' song on the record, but I think it has a great feeling, and I love playing the bass line on that song, and I love the way the music and the arrangements work together. So yeah, check out the Blue Wall record if you haven't heard it yet. I think there's a few really great songs on that album. Noah killed it with the writing. Ian engineered it and produced it, did an amazing job, and Rhett played his ass off. So, and then we have some additional musicians too, one of which is Rhett Huffman, who's a good friend of ours that plays keys. So we had 2 Rhetts on the album, which is double. The Rhett is double the tone. I prefer to play on records with at least 2 Rhetts. Evening, Philip Ottawa here. Hello, Heart of Oak. Building a jazz bass. Very cool. Chosen a Kent Armstrong pickups. Good choice. I'm in. Okay, you're a huge Geddy Lee fan. Might upgrade to a set of his. That is a good question. I honestly have not used the Kent Armstrong pickups. The only non-stock jazz bass pickups that I've used are the Lawlers that are in my Nash, and I love those. I know Fralin makes some great pickups for jazz bass. I do have Fralin pickups for my P bass, but I can't speak to those specific pickups. But let me know how the build goes. That's exciting. That's cool that you're building a jazz bass. That is a very worthy endeavor. What pickups are in the Mustang? So those are just the stock pickups. This is the Justin Mendel Johnson. I believe Seymour Duncan makes the stock pickups in the Justin Mendel Johnson through Fender. And then I just changed the pickup covers to white, which I'm thinking about switching back to black. What do you think? I think both are kind of cool. Got a little Japanese whiskey here. $19 people in the chat. That's what's up. Man, we got some people from all over the place. It makes me happy. So, I'm really close to 4,000 hours. And I don't know if you know this, but on YouTube, once you get 4,000 watch hours, then you can monetize your channel. So I'm really excited about that. That's hopefully going to happen here in the next few days. But once that happens, I'm excited because I think I have some merchandise, some Philip Conrad music swag coming your way. My wife, Shay, is a graphic designer, and she's been making some cool stuff. So, gonna have some cool stuff here available soon, and that'll be cool because anytime you get something through the shop, it'll help make the channel possible. So, really excited about that. Okay, Loopy Demos, what's up? I see you have a question. What's your signal chain right now? What do you recommend for home recording, cab sim plugins? Very good question. So right now I am I'm going into the Apollo Twin, and I am using some plugins through Universal Audio in the console. So right now I just have I think I've got a LA610 preamp with, I like to use 2 compressors a lot of times for plugins on bass. I usually use the 1176 with I usually do a 4:1 or 8:1 ratio depending. And that one's mostly to capture the transients that are really jumping out. And then I will do an LA2A after that. So I like to use 2 compressors. the 1176 to tame the harsh transients, and then the LA 2A is to sort of bring the warmth and level and smooth things out. So yeah, just UA right now, although I really like the outside of UA, I really like Soundtoys Radiator plugin. It's pretty rad on bass. So I use that sometimes. My favorite free plugin is I'm going to come back to that. But your other question, I haven't done a lot of cab sim stuff. It's something that I want to learn more about, and I'm open to learning about it, but it's something that I don't have a lot of experience yet. So I mostly am either using total analog, where I'm recording direct in, or miking up the cab, or I'm using UA stuff or Soundtoy stuff. Sometimes I'll use Isotope as well. But yeah, big fan of the LA2A. And what else we got? Got any other questions in here? Let's see. I'm going to scroll back a little bit because I think I might have missed some questions. Current Noah Guthrie rig. Well, what's funny is I haven't gotten to play with Noah Guthrie much recently with all of the pandemic stuff, unfortunately. We got a few shows in this summer, but then everything's kind of been shutting down again, which is a bummer. But for the Noah gig, my amp, I'm using a Thunderfunk. I don't know if you know Thunderfunk, but it's a super cool amp company. It's a pretty clean sounding amp. And then I'm using Aguilar caps. And then on the pedal board, the main pedal that I'm using, besides the tuner, is the Renninka Fat Fuck, which is actually what it's called. It's spelled with a PH. But it's a great little boost. And sometimes I'll use the Ampeg compressor pedal, but I like to keep things pretty chill live. I personally like bass tones that are pretty clean, and I like keeping things simple where they can't go wrong. So I am not using a ton of plugins. And right now, my cat and my dog are both trying to come in and hang out with you guys. So bear with me for a second while I put them out. Oh, wow. What's up, Noah? See any cool birds recently? Congratulations on the...
You good?
Yeah, I just closed the door.
Oh.
Pino and Ella were trying to make an appearance. Thanks. Congratulations on the release, Noah. I really miss you too, man. Everybody say hey to Noah and Rhett. They're both in the chat. That makes me so happy. Yes, and my cat is named Pino. Named after Pino Palladino. I have a cat named after a bass player. Yeah, he was embarrassed that he had to be taken out, but he can be a troublemaker. Man, this is so fun. I'm so happy all of you are here. So the live stream thing is new for me. It's not something that I've done before, and I'm learning. So thanks for bearing with me with all the technical stuff. And yeah, keep throwing your questions out because we can talk bass stuff or gear stuff or whatever you want. But let's see what else we got. Looks like we got a lot of questions in here. And my internet is a little laggy, which is a bummer. I'm hoping that I don't lose the connection. So if that's the case, we'll do it on the next one. I have not tried the Geddy Lee pickups. Okay, cool. Heart of Oak is coordinating with Watchmaker. That makes me happy. Alan. Hey, Phil, so it's true you're not a hand puppet controlled by Rhett. Oh my gosh. It is true. I am I am actually a sentient being. A sentient being. Not controlled by Rhett, although Rhett is one of my best friends. So we got Noah and Rhett in the chat. Yes, when things get better, we'll go to the Ottawa Blues Fest. That sounds great. It would be cool to do a live stream with Rhett sometime. What do you think, Rhett? Alex Bull asked, does bass gear matter? Well, yes and no. I think it does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as we like to think it does. I think so much of it is in your playing and in your hands, your sense of time, and your musical brain. But if you have good gear, it's going to sound better, you know? But I think it's less of a percentage of importance than we like to admit. Alex asks, what is a good bass head? Well, I love the flip top. Actually, next week, I have a flip top video for you. So on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, I'm going to have my first amp video, and I'm going to talk about the Ampeg flip top. So stay tuned for that, and I'll go in depth on the flip top on Wednesday. But I do really like the Thunderfunk head. For Backstage Live, I was using the Ampeg. There's an all-tube head that I loved. I think it was the V4, I want to say is what it was called. I'll have to double check that. But huge fan of that amp. I love the way the Backstage Live bass sound turned out, thanks to Ampeg and Andy for dialing it in. Let's see. Red says, okay. Do you have a preference in string, flat wound, or full wrap? Good question. Strings make a huge difference on your sound as a bass player. Right now I actually have half rounds on this Mustang. And I actually really like them on the Mustang. What's funny is right now I have flats on the P bass, rounds on the jazz bass, half rounds on the Mustang, and tape wounds on the semi-hollow. So I've got a different string on each of my basses, and I find that the strings that you choose, not so much the brand, but the type, has one of the biggest impacts on your bass tone. I find that flat wounds are super smooth and warm and mellow, and then you've got your round wounds are bright and aggressive. Your half rounds are right in the middle, but they feel like flats, but they sound a little more like rounds. And then tape wounds are super easy on the fingers, really warm and tubby, but then they have a sort of crisp top end, and they're like super scooped sounding, and the texture is so there's two things with strings. There's the way they sound, and then the way that they feel in your fingers. And it's all preference. It's preference on what you like in your sound, and it's preference in how you like the strings to feel. So in general, I usually play flats. That's kind of my favorite sound. But on the Mustang, when we were over in Germany, we were playing with our friend Tice, and his record was leaning a little more rock than some of the music I play. And I found that switching to the half rounds gave me a lot more clarity in the mix, because we were doing a lot of layers in the mix. So it's a good question. What camera are you using? I'm using the Sony ZV-E10. It's my new camera. I love it. And I got that when I hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you're one of those first 1,000, thank you for letting me get a camera, because my first 10 or so videos I did all with my iPhone, and that was a huge pain. It is so nice having a real camera. So Loopy Demos just listened to the whole album. Man, thanks, Loopy Demos. I'm so happy everybody's here. Rhett said we should do another one together next week. Yes, sir. Let's do it. I'm game. Just let me know when. I go back to work in a week and a half on a movie. So when I'm not doing music, I'm working in the film industry doing sound for movies. But everything's shut down right now because of COVID. So Caleb knows a lot about flip tops. Caleb will stay tuned for Wednesday and tell me if you agree with my opinions. What's the difference between a full scale and a short scale regarding sound? That's a really good question. I find that a short scale is naturally a little bit scooped. I found it has a little more bottom end. It has a ton of sustain. And some of it has to do with the science of you have a shorter string. Because, like, okay, think about it. Say you're playing a note. You could play a D on the 5th fret of the A string, or you could play a D on the 10th fret of the E string, right? Why do they sound different? It has to do with how thick the string is and also the length of the strings, right? So when you're shortening a string length, you're getting richer overtones. So you could take that same concept of shortening the string between your frets, between strings on frets. You could apply that to the shortness of the string overall. So if there's a 34-inch bass or a 32-inch bass or a 30-inch bass, the difference of the strings is changing the overtones and the character of the tone. So I find that the short scale bass has a really rich tone, and it has a lot of punch and a lot of bottom end and a lot of sustain. And I actually have a video just about short scale length instruments if you want to check that out. But they definitely have a cool sound. It's preference. Not everybody likes them, but I think short scales sound great. Let's see. That was a really good question, Judah. Recently picked up a 69 EB2D for a ridiculous deal. Congratulations, Cooper. More of a guitar player, and I'm used to a pick. Any tips on playing with a pick? I feel clunky when I play. Well, that's okay. It just takes practice. It's different than playing with guitar. But it's like anything, just put your metronome on slow, 60 or 70 BPM, and just practice slow and get your muscle memory in. And remember, you don't have to play a lot of notes. So just take it slow and it'll start to come together. There's no golden secret on how to play bass well with a pick. I do really like the Jim Dunlop Big Stubby. It's the purple one. See if I have one sitting around here. I don't want to leave. Oh, I do have one in my pocket. I love these picks. They're 3 millimeters. They're purple, and they just sound good here. So I'll play fingerstyle for a second, and then with the pick, I'm palm muting. That's maybe a tip for you. So take your palm, the fat part of your hand, kind of roll back along the strings just a hair. You can use your palm to try and mute your strings, like open, or if you use your palm, it's a cool sound. You lose a little bit of sustain and you lose a little bit of the brightness of the note, but it's almost like using a compressor where you're like delaying your attack a little bit, where you can get like a nice attack and then your palm sort of mutes the note and stops it before it opens up all the way. So yeah, I would say Find a pick that works for you. One that works well for me is the Jim Dunlop Big Stubby, the purple one, 3mm, and practice your palm muting, and just practice slow and practice with a metronome, and it will start to come together over time. Hopefully that is helpful for you. Throw your questions out, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. Red asks if I'm going to investigate fuzz after using it so much on the Roofman album. I used a lot of effects on the Roofman album. And I would like to get some more fuzz when the funds permit. Yeah, Caleb, first 100 subscribers. Okay, Alan asks, seriously, what year is the Ampeg behind you? Good question. This is an Ampeg B15N from 1969. And I love it. I love it very much. And actually, this coming Wednesday, I have a video about the flip top. So I'm going to tell you all about it on Wednesday. But it's a great amp. It's one of my favorite pieces of gear is that flip top. Hey, what's up, AMP? Glad you're here. Judah, glad it was helpful for you. Throw your questions out, everybody. If you got any bass or music or sound or whatever questions, and I'll do my best. And by the way, I feel like I have to do this because it's part of my job now. But if you are trying to get to the next level with your bass playing, I do have a course out now. And if you want to support the channel or what I'm doing, take a look at the course because I'm really proud of it. I basically took the whole month of December and I shot like a 2 to 3 hour course where we start with the beginning of bass playing all the way up into some advanced stuff and everywhere in between. But if you're maybe feeling stuck or frustrated with where you're at with your bass playing, I've designed the course to try and help you break out of that sort of rut. So check it out. I'm Philip Conrad Music on Teachable, and I have links to it in all my videos. So really proud of that course, and if you do want to check it out, it would really help me because it'll help me to support me with the channel. And got merch coming soon. I'm excited about that. I'm almost to 4,000 4,000 watch hours, and once I'm there, then YouTube will monetize the channel. So I'm really excited about that. I'm hoping that I can do more and more stuff on YouTube as the channel grows. So anyway, I'm rambling, but all that to say, check the course out, and I'm excited to share some merch with you soon to help support the channel. Throw your questions at everybody. It says, everyone type Philip Conrad when you have a question. Yeah, that's great. Okay. I'm still learning, guys. This is my first live stream, but I'm having a great time. I'm glad you're here. Okay, that's a really good question, Scott. How many watts do you need in an amp to join with others? It depends on the style of music, right? Like, for example, this, and also if it's a solid state or a tube amp. So this Ampeg behind me is only 30 watts of power, but it's 30 tube watts. It also depends on if there's a PA at the gig or if you're supplying the bass for everybody. That kind of brings in some history of bass amps and why some of the giant bass amps exist. Before PAs were very good, the band was supplying all the volume for the gig, right? So drums are getting louder, rock is getting louder, guitar amps are getting louder, and bass amps are getting bigger. But then, fast forward a couple decades, you got subwoofers in the PA systems, right? So you might not need a giant amp if there's a PA on the gig that has subs. So maybe your amp is almost functioning as a glorified stage monitor, if that's the case, and your direct box signal is more important than your amp signal. It all depends on the context of the gig you're in. So I would say, but let's say just to jam with others, and it's not a gig. Let's say you're jamming in a garage. Unless you're playing some really heavy music, I think I would think like 100 to 300 watts would do you well. You don't have to have something crazy. But if you want headroom, maybe go for 500 watts. But if you're just jamming in the garage and it's not super loud, you don't need all of that. Maybe it'd be cool to do some like which amp should you buy sort of videos, because I think the amp question, so much of it has to do with the context of music that you're playing, how loud the music is, where the venue is, if there's a PA or not, and that'll really inform the decision. So I guess it's a nuanced answer. There's a few layers to that. But I would say look for 300 to 500 watts so that you don't outgrow it and you have a little bit of headroom and you don't destroy your amplifier trying to keep up with a drummer that's playing a little too loud. So yeah, throw your questions out there. That was a really good question, Scott. Thoughts on modeling pedals when you don't want to or can't carry an amp? I haven't done the Helix. I haven't done the Kemper. I haven't personally used the modeling. I'm curious about it. I'd like to try it. I'm a bit skeptical. But I've heard great things. I would say rather than going for a modeler, I would probably reach for a tube direct box, because that's where you can get some of that saturation and tone without having to rely on a computer in a live setting. But I know I'm archaic in that view. I know the technology's gotten really good. I know there are some great options out there. I just haven't personally used them enough to give you an informed decision. There's a bunch of stuff. Honestly, there's a bunch of stuff I'd love to try as this channel's growing and as people are asking more questions. They're asking questions like, I honestly don't have the answer for you because I haven't had the chance to make my opinion yet. So I'm hoping that I can get my hands on some gear like that to give you an honest review. But I'll be honest with you if I don't know either. And as far as modeling goes, I just don't know yet. I'm a bit skeptical yet intrigued, and I look forward to giving you an honest review when I get a chance to. Oh, Matt, thanks for saying you like the course. That makes me happy. Ooh, watchmaker. That's a great question. Okay, cool. And it's not a music question. I love music questions, but it's fun to answer a sound question. So, watchmaker asked, what is the most challenging thing about doing on-location sound for TV and movies? Honestly, it's dealing with difficult people. There's a lot of egos on set. So, to back up, when I'm not playing bass, I am doing sound on movies and television shows. I'm a technician. I'm a boom operator, so I hold the microphone just out of the frame. So if this was the frame of the camera, I would have a microphone right here and just up a hair, and then that's what you would hear when you watch the movie. So my job is to make sure before the actor says their line, that mic is right there. And it's a fun job. But I think the biggest challenge is dealing with difficult people. Every once in a while you have to deal with a really difficult camera operator, or just different departments. But if everyone plays well together and is a team player, then the job is super fun. So I love working in television and movies. There's a lot of crossover between music and the film industry, actually. But that's something that I do as well as play bass, as I'm a boom operator. And I've gotten to work on some really cool stuff in Atlanta. If you didn't know, Atlanta's like one of the top 3 in the world for making movies and television shows. So there's a good chance that I might have worked on one of your favorite shows. But I also signed NDA, so I'm not supposed to talk about it. Throw your questions out there, everybody. I'll do my best to answer them. Caleb asked, you said you injured your hand, and that's when you tried the Mustang. So how'd you injure your hand? So that's a story that I'm hoping to share soon. I don't think I'm quite ready to share the whole story. But I think that's going to be its own video where we talk about dealing with injuries and recovering from injuries as a musician. What it's like when you are afraid you can't play music again, or maybe you can't play music to the same level ever again. Something that I've had to deal with. And it was really tough. So I'm thinking I'm going to make a video about that when the timing is right, and I just don't think I'm quite ready to do it. But it is something that I'm hoping to do. And I'm hoping to make that video so that it can genuinely help other musicians that may be dealing with the same thing. So I'll get back to you on that, and I appreciate you asking. Favorite reverb pedal for bass? I don't typically use reverb on bass, although when I was in Germany a couple months ago recording the Roofman record, I did use some spring reverb on the bass, and that was really cool. I was using the Universal Audio new modeling reverb things. Rhett, maybe you can fill in the gaps on which one that is, but I wasn't 100% sold on it. But definitely like a spring reverb, and playing with a pick can be really cool. So let me know what your favorite spring reverb is, because I like to keep exploring them. I'm honestly pretty new to playing with pedals. It's not something I've done a ton of, but it definitely is. It brings out a whole different thing to the music and to the playing. You asked about the upright. I don't play the upright near as much anymore. And part of that is because of the hand injury I was just talking about. So I go back and forth on if I'm going to sell it or not. But I think I might do an upright bass video soon. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I might get a little help from a friend on that one. But the upright's super fun. It's a totally different sound and experience to play that instrument. Noah asks about my hopes for the new Lord of the Rings show. Well, if you don't know, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. In fact, my tattoo is from a poem in the Lord of the Rings, which I'll spare you. Could recite it, but I'm not going to embarrass myself. Big Lord of the Rings fan, as is Noah. And I think my hope, Noah, for the new Lord of the Rings show, I have one simple hope, and that's that they don't cheapen it. I hope that they don't make it. I hope that they don't over-sexualize it and I don't know. I just hope that if Tolkien had the chance to watch the new Amazon show, that he would smile and not frown. That's my hope. I hope that they keep it classy and don't stray too far from the lore. But I'm excited for it. Also, I don't know if there's any Star Wars fans in here, but I'm really loving the Book of Boba Fett right now. Episode 3 is rad. So if you haven't seen that yet, you need to. Throw your questions out, everybody. I'm having a great time here. I'm glad that you're here. It's fun to talk about music, and I think doing a live stream is something that is new to me, but I'm hoping to do more frequently, so I might try and make it into a regular thing here. Okay, let me catch up on some questions here. fine. There's a bunch of stuff. Man, I'm so glad you all are here and you're throwing stuff out in the chat. Makes me happy. Okay. Phil, do you play in any other bands than with Rhett? Yes. At the moment, no. Things are weird because of COVID. There's a band that I played in for years with a guy named Sam Birchfield. And I love Sam's music. So I played bass for Sam for a long time. I played in a lot of churches. I used to play in a bunch of wedding bands. But basically, I kind of pulled back from playing music when I hurt my hand a few years ago, and I started working in the film industry. And then I kind of became, just through the circumstances, I sort of consolidated the music that I was playing. I continued to play with Noah, and then when COVID happened, I played in Deacon Night with Rhett and Jamie and Chad. And then I have a good friend, Tice, who lives in Holland, and Rhett and I recently went over and played on his record. Do what? Yeah.
I'm behind. Sorry.
And so yeah, Good Trouble, Deacon Knight, and Roofman are some bands that I'm currently playing in. But it's funny. Most of the bands I play in, and the music I play, is with Rhett, which is not a bad thing. I love playing music with Rhett. Okay, FN Mag 762 likes the camera work in the videos and asks, do you have some experience or are you just skillfully winging it? I am winging it. I am learning about camera. I'm learning about how to film things and having a great time doing it. I still have a lot to learn, but it's something that is fun and I find challenging. I have had the opportunity to be around a lot of filmmakers with my job because I do sound for movies, so I get to hang out with cinematographers all day and get to watch them work. So through that, I've gotten to pick some concepts up, but as far as like actually filming and shooting with camera, that's something that's new for me, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Rhett, I'd love to borrow your Kemper. And yes, let's profile the flip top. I'm going to scroll to the bottom because I feel like I'm way behind. Okay, Caleb asks, do you... Yeah, I think maybe that's a better way for me to do this, is to live at the bottom of the chat. And then, if I didn't get to your question, just throw it out there again, and hopefully I'll get to it. I'm still learning this whole live stream thing. Okay. Nuccio asks about the Squire Affinity short scale basses. There are no Squire Affinity short scale basses. I know that Fender is making some like $500 Mustang basses that I think have a P bass and a jazz bass pickup. And I haven't gotten my hands on one, but I feel like that would be a really good option. Although I know Fender is making more and more short scale basses. I don't know the specific model to tell you, but I know that there's a few options between $300 and $500 or $600. If you're going to go up to $1,000, I would say look at the Justin Mendel Johnson. And I love that one. Comes in blue and black. But the specific one, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Although, check out Chicago Music Exchange. They have a really extensive bass department, and they've been promoting some of the newer Mustangs. And that would be a way you could find the specific model, because I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Hello, Italy. Glad to have you here. Throw out where you are in the world. I love that YouTube brings people together from all around the world. It's really cool to me. Two Blue asks, what camera am I using? I'm using my new camera, the Sony ZV-E10, which I love, which was the camera I got when I got 1,000 subscribers. Rhett is asking me to recite the poem, and I'm ignoring him, but if other people ask, I might. Yes, I think the Squire Classic Vibe series is probably it. Thank you, Loopy Demos. That sounds familiar. Southern Indiana, that's what's up. Actually, Evansville. I got family in Evansville. I've also got family in Indianapolis and Purdue. How are you enjoying the half rounds on the Mustang? I have 3-year-old flats and I'm hesitant to take them off. Need to punch more live. Chase is not. Yes. Well, first off, you can take your strings off and put them in a Ziploc bag and throw them in a drawer and they'll be good 3 years from now. So don't let... I think that's maybe one difference between guitar and bass that people don't realize. Maybe you know this, Chase, but maybe someone else in the chat doesn't know this. You can reuse strings. You can have bass strings that last for 10 years. You can recycle them. You can... So there's nothing wrong with, if you want to try some different strings, you can take those bad boys off, put some different ones on. So if you want a little more punch in the mix, then yes, I would definitely recommend the half rounds. They take a little breaking in, but they definitely give you a little more in the mix. Yeah, check. I was kind of hesitant, but once it was funny. We were in the studio, and I was playing the Mustang with flats, and I was playing it through a tube amp, and I was playing it with saturation, but I just didn't have what I wanted. And then I had brought those along as an option, and I didn't think I would actually try it, and I was like, let me try it. And I remember when I switched those strings, the producer came out of the control room and came over and was like curious what I had done, because he was happy with the change. So the I think if you want a little more traction, that would be a cool thing to try. And if you don't like it, just switch back to your flats. So oh gosh, Noah's in on it too now. Okay, that's a really good question, Matt. I'm going to address Matt's question. How frequently should I expect to change bass strings? I am used to hanging guitar strings every month, but I suspect and hope that bass strings last longer. Okay, I think this is another one of those big differences. And by the way, I'm ignoring Rhett and Noah that are asking me to recite the poem. If there are non-band members that want me to recite the poem, I will give it a try. But I am ignoring Rhett and Noah. But I am going to answer Matt's question. So I think that's one of the big differences between guitar and bass strings. Think of strings like shoes, right? So if you had a pair of shoes that you wore every day, they would probably wear out within a few months or a year. But if you didn't wear them all the time, they might last for years. So it has to do with how much you're using them. So you could realistically leave your strings on your bass for a decade and never have to change them if they didn't break, right? But some of it has to do with what your preference is in your tone. The more you play your strings, the more mellow and the less attack or the less brightness they'll have. They'll get more dull sounding, which is a super cool sound. It's just, what do you like? If you like a bright sound, you might need to change your strings more frequently. But another tip is, if you like really bright strings and you don't like having to pay for new ones all the time, you can actually take your bass strings off your bass and boil them in water. And that's a trick I used to do when money was tight and I wanted a bright sound. You can take your strings, wrap them like in a circle, put them in like a little, like put them on the stove, like fill up a pot with water and bring it to a boil, and then drop the strings in there, boil them for like 2 minutes, and then dump the water out, dry the strings off, and they'll sound bright again. They might not sound exactly new, but basically what you're doing is you're removing the layers of grease and bacteria from your strings that build up. Because bass strings, they're like a strong cable. They're like a steel cable. So if they don't break, there's no reason you don't have to reuse them, and there's no reason that you don't have to. I mean, you can make them sound new again. Some people have strings on their bass that they have had for years, and that's fine too. It has to do with your preference. But bass strings can last a long time. Now, I will tell you, there is a good chance that when you least expect it, they are going to break. They do break. Bass strings do break, especially when if you're getting into some like sort of thumpy, muted sort of. I find bass strings like to break when I'm playing like real like when I'm doing a lot of muted. And there's been a few times when I've been on a gig, and oh gosh, I remember one time I was playing I Wish by Stevie Wonder, and I broke the A string. Worst possible musical situation to break a string. So what I do tell people is to always have a spare set of strings and have a broken in set of strings. So I would encourage you, get 2 sets of strings, play them for a month, break the first set in, and then put them in your gig bag, and then play that second set of strings forever. And then if you break a set, you have an already broken in set that you can throw on your instrument, because if you throw a brand new set on, then it's going to sound different. You're going to go between strings, and you'll have a really bright sounding note, and then you'll have a dull sounding note, and it won't sound balanced. So all that to say, bass strength can last forever. It has to do with your tone preference, if you want them bright or dull. And you can recycle them by boiling them. And if you want to leave them on for a while, you should have a spare set. That's my take on bass strings. Okay. Oh, damn. Well, it looks like we got a bunch of people asking for the poem. All right, let me have a sip of whiskey, and then I'll see what I can do. Arundel was a mariner that tarried in Arvernian. He built a boat of timber, felled in Nimberthel to journey in. Her sails he wove of silver fair, of silver were her lanterns made. Her prow was fashioned light like a swan, and light upon her banners laid. In panoply of ancient kings and chained rings he armored him. His shining shield was scored with runes, to ward all wounds and harm from him. His bow was made of dragon horn, his arrows shorn of ebony. Of silver was his habergeon, his scabbard of chalcedony. His sword of steel was valiant, of adamant his helmet tall, an eagle plume upon his crest, upon his breast an emerald. So my tattoo is Arendel's ship Vinglut on the seas sailing into the west. I love that poem because J.R.R. Tolkien wrote that in the trenches, I think, in the Battle of the Somme. Maybe that was a bit later when he was I can't remember exactly the timeline in his life when he wrote it, but the reason he wrote it is because he found an old manuscript of that mentioned Arundel, and no one knew who it was, and then he was like, well, maybe I'll write a story. And he started writing the beginning sketches of the Lord of the Rings. So in the whole Middle Earth world. So to me, it's a ode to like the creative muse of like finding something that you don't understand and then trying to create something based off of it. So there's the poem. It goes on many stanzas, and I won't go further than those first two. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay. Anytime you guys want to talk about Lord of the Rings, I'll talk about that the rest of the chat, but I'll have to use some restraint. So now that that's out of the way. Throw your questions out, everybody. Let's see if I can catch up. Don't have opinion on the Gretsch Electromaster Orange Hollow Body bass. Sounds pretty rad. Never played one, so I'm sorry I can't share with you. Rhett says his P bass strings are 7 years old. Leave those on there forever, man. Nothing wrong with that. Once you're done with the strings, you can reuse the water for the worst spaghetti you ever tasted. That's awesome, AMP. What's some of the more out of your comfort show? That's a really good question, Heavy Metal Banjo. What are some more out of your comfort zone shows you've played? I will tell you one story. I remember one time I got called to do a country gig, and there was no rehearsal. I don't think there was a rehearsal. I was like, know these 50 songs and show up at this address sort of situation. So I showed up, and it was in the middle of the woods in a barn, and it was actually a coming home party for some soldiers from, I think, Iraq. They were coming back from like the war, and this soldier's dad was throwing a party for the whole like unit. So it was like 30 dudes, 30 soldiers that just came home, and they were ready to party. So I was playing bass on like in a barn for a bunch of soldiers they were ready to party. They actually passed around a bucket and put all their keys in there. And I remember actually before they got too drunk, they were ramping their trucks off of ramps and shooting M16s into the woods. But the moment that I remember is one of the soldiers had he had lost his leg. So he had a prosthetic leg over his knee. So like his knee was chopped off there, right? So he had like a nub where his thigh is. So like his leg, he took his leg off, which was like, imagine like a concave opening that goes over his knee nub. So it's like this big open thing that he would like strap around his leg. And they figured out that they could put about 6 beers worth of alcohol in his leg. And they were chugging beer out of this man's prosthetic leg. So that was a moment at a gig where I was out of my comfort zone. Maybe that was a weird story, but you asked. Throw out some more questions if you want. And actually, we'll probably wrap this up soon because this has been about an hour. Okay, very good question. How essential is a 5-string bass for the average gig? I think it depends on what the average gig is for you, or really what the genre of music you're playing is. So, for example, you don't need a 5-string, but you also people have a lot of opinions on it. I'll tell you some of the advantages and disadvantages of a 5 or 6-string bass. So on a 4-string bass, if you want to change octaves, you have to shift your hand a lot left to right. But on a 5-string bass, so you're getting some of the extra low notes on a 5-string bass. You get below that E down to that low B. But then you're also getting the strategic positioning. So instead of jumping down, you could just move your hand down or up if it's a 6-string, right? So it gives you some economy of motion where you can have positions that are more convenient for you to play without having to shift your hand as much. But it's also making the neck thicker. So it's maybe not as comfortable. I personally prefer the feel of a 4-string. Now I will say certain genres of music, it can be really helpful to have a 5-string bass. Like, for example, I've had the privilege of playing bass at some gospel churches, like African American gospel churches, and a lot of traditional gospel songs are in A flat or E flat or D flat or B flat. And if you're playing songs that have a root of an E flat or a D flat, having that low octave is really helpful. from playing in those positions down here is actually really helpful. So I guess it depends on the styles of music. Some styles of music have tunings that lend themselves well for that low B string. And then there's the comfort factor. But you don't need a 5-string. I don't own a 5-string currently. I haven't owned a 5-string in probably 7 years. I did own one for a while and I played it, and I decided that it wasn't for me. But it might be for you. So it just depends on your personal preference. But that's a really good question. I think we're gonna wrap this up here. I might do like 2 more questions. But before I go, everybody say where you're from, because I want to know. And also, I'm gonna couple things. I'm thinking about doing some private lessons online, maybe next week. So if there's anybody that is a bass student that would like to do a private lesson with me, I'm trying to gauge interest to see if there's people that are interested in that. It's not something that I could do all the time. It would be like a one-off lesson. But if anybody wants to take a bass lesson from me next week, maybe send me a DM on Instagram. That might be the best way for us to coordinate for now. But I'm trying to gauge interest. So that's one thing. Another thing, if you haven't checked it out yet, 4-String Fundamentals is my bass course. I have a link to that in every one of my YouTube videos. And that's why you can support the channel. And then finally, I do have some merch coming here soon. So stay tuned for that. But I'm just going to do like a couple more questions. Oh, loopy demos. More production details in the tiny songs. Yes. Yes, I hear you loud and clear. I will go deeper into that. And I'm actually thinking about potentially doing a tiny song live stream, which would be ambitious, just from the technical side, trying to get everything where you guys can see what I'm doing and hear what I'm doing. But I think that would be really fun. So I might do that soon if I can work it out. But in terms of the regular tiny songs, I will go in more depth on some of the tech stuff, because I've gotten a few people that have asked about that. Okay, so I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Oh, wow. Utah, Oregon, New York City, Canada, Sweden, Philly, Ackworth, Georgia. Hey, what's up, Clint? Brazil, Canada, South Carolina, UK, I got asked about my opinion on hollow body electric basses. I really like the Hofner. I haven't played a ton of the other ones, but I love the Hofner, and I have seen a couple times I got asked by Alan about multi-scale basses, and if I don't have an informed opinion for you, I'm not ignoring you. I haven't spent enough time to have a good answer for you. Looking for like another question or two. Okay, Marcus has a great question. What are the pros and cons of a tube amp as opposed to a solid state amp for bass? So I'll do that one, and then maybe one more. Maybe we'll end on that one. But thanks everybody for being here today. This has been super fun. But I'll answer that solid state tube question, and then we'll log off here in a few minutes. So the solid state tube question is a great question. It comes up a lot. So the obvious advantages of tube amps are they sound great. Everybody loves how tube amps sound. They have this sort of natural compression and natural saturation that they're providing your sound, and for a bass player, both of those things are really helpful to sit in the mix. And it's almost like there's something really nice about playing a tube amp where it's almost like you're laying on like a really nice It's like a really nice comforter on the bed, where it's like that like soft, like, or like a Tempur-Pedic mattress where you like lay down on the bed and there's like a cushion. There's like almost like this sonic cushion when you play a tube amp, where the note is sort of like, it just sort of like blossoms and opens up as you play it, and it's sonically it's a very pleasant sound, and also it's an inspiring sound to play, because a tube amplifier, it just feels different, and it actually informs your playing in a different way. I play differently when I'm playing a tube amp or a solid state amp. I'll play different musical ideas because the sound actually inspires a different, almost vocabulary of music, right? So that's the main pro of a tube amp. The cons of a tube amp are they're heavy and they require service. So it just depends on the context of your gig. If you're traveling a lot, or if you're lugging an amp up the stairs all the time, having a 50-pound or 75-pound amplifier is a huge pain. So maybe you don't want like a giant SVT to carry around all the time. The solid state, there are some really great solid states out there, and there's solid states that have solid state pre and solid state. That you can get one that has maybe a tube preamp with solid state power, or there's also like a tube amp that has a tube pre and tube power, like the flip top, which has tube pre and tube power. So solid state, it's a preference thing, but a solid state amp tends to be much more clean, and they might require higher wattage to get the same volume, but they tend to travel well. They tend to not be as heavy, and they're a good option too. So you just have to decide if the weight and the fragility are worth the tone to you for the context of the gig that you're playing. Now, another thing too is, and this comes into some of the philosophy of amplification for bass players, it's a little different than it is for guitar players, because it's sort of standard and accepted for guitar players to have amplifiers because it's such a big part of the sound. But for bass, sometimes you only get your direct box signal. If it's in the recording studio, maybe they don't have enough inputs, and they don't want the bleed where your amplifier is going to bleed into the overheads on the drums, and or maybe you're on stage where there's subwoofers and your amp is too loud. There's a number of situations that you might run into where you don't need a huge amp and a huge amount of volume in amplifier, and you might be better off with a direct box signal. And if those are the majority of the gigs that you're playing, then maybe you don't need to lug a big old tube amp around with you. But they sound awesome, and I love them. So I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a true rule on when you should or shouldn't use a tube amp or a solid state amp. But the main things to consider are tube amps. They can be expensive. They can be heavy. They can break. You need to service them, but they sound amazing. Solid state amps tend to be lighter, and they do well on the road. So maybe I'll do one more question. We'll wrap it up here. Evansville, Indiana. That's awesome, Caleb. Yeah, my mom's from Evansville, so I went up there all the time to see family. Got the Netherlands. We got a lot of people all around the U.S. Okay, this is a good question that I'm going to end with Noah Shreve. And this will be the last question, guys and ladies. If there are any ladies in the chat, I think it's mostly guys, but don't want to assume. And before I do this question, thank you for being here. This is super fun. I could see myself doing this more often, and I really appreciate you being here and supporting the channel. So Noah's question: what was the biggest game changer in your writing process? I think for me, the biggest game changer in my writing process is when I made a conscious decision to not write for musicians. I think there was a time when I was learning music and coming out of music school and a part of the scene where I was trying to impress and get the respect of other musicians, and I was trying to show people what I knew, and I was trying to show that I was a legit musician and I listened to the right things, and I these aren't bad things, but there was a time when I kind of decided I was just going to stop doing that, and I was going to write music that made me feel things, or might write music based off of how I was actually feeling, and just removing the whole intellectual side from it and the whole like identity and trying to prove something, and then just saying like, I'm just going to write music that I believe 100%, and maybe people are going to like it, maybe they won't, but I'm not going to try and prove anything to anybody with my music. I'm just going to make music that I find fulfilling, that I enjoy making, and that is expressing myself. And that's hard. It's easier said than done. But when I just decided to stop caring about what musicians thought is when I feel like I made a big change in my writing, and I started liking the things that I was making more. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, but yeah, I would say just try to write music that is really honest and is just based off of how you're doing and how you're feeling and what you think is cool, and not what you're supposed to think is cool. So yeah, that's what I got. So I think this is the first, and Noah agrees, which makes me happy because Noah's one of the best songwriters I know. And if you haven't yet, go check out his album, because Noah dropped a pretty fire record today, if I can say that about it. I'm really proud of Blue Wall. So Noah's on there, Rhett's on there, Ian's on there, some other friends are on there, but that is an album that I hope that you enjoy, and today is the day that it is out there. So yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. But this has been super rad. So thanks for hanging out, and maybe we'll do some more of these. So thanks. I'll see you later.